morning, good afternoon, good evening. This video clip has been circulating in the social media and has generated a lot of heat, but as usual, with very little enlightenment. If you listen carefully to the gentleman, he is saying exactly what Matemadanda and those behind the 2017 military coup were saying. Let's just listen to it.
Good afternoon, fellow Zimbabweans. I am Blessed Runes Ugeza, a war veteran, Zanu PF Central Committee member, and patriotic Zimbabwe, whose commitment to a prosperous and democratic motherland is unparalleled. Today, I'm accompanied by fellow patriotic Zimbabweans who fought in the trenches, commanders from both Zipra and Zanla, who fought in the trenches to liberate this country from the brutal minority white colonial rule. These comrades are well-known fighters from both Zanla and Zipra, as I've said. We fought in the second Chimurenga with the hope of bringing economic emancipation, freedom, and justice to our fellow brothers and sisters and future generations. Sadly, these values and aspirations, which we carried as we fought during the war, continue to evade us 44 years after independence. The majority of Black Zimbabweans remain poor, jobless, and without real freedom, as a few Black leaders have assumed the face, character, and elements of the very beast we fought against in the 1970s War of Liberation. The press conference is being held with the aim of mapping a way forward and addressing these imbalances, which for long have been neglected or ignored. In particular, it's a special message to Emmerson Mnangagwa, a nationalist who in 27 was brought to power through the help and support of all veterans and the general population of Zimbabwe via Operation Restore Legacy. In general, we also address corrupt gangsters and hangers-on who surround him and abuse national resources for selfish reasons. This man and those around him have failed us. He have failed all Zimbabweans who believed that the events of 2017 would bring an end to despotism, corruption, and privatization of the nation and its people. He is now nearly 10 years in power, but corruption, cronyism, and nepotism have escalated under his rule to extents never seen before in this country. Fellow Zimbabweans, allow me to elaborate on these direct allegations against Mnangagwa, which demonstrate that he has failed this nation constitutionally, morally, and historically. Attack against war veterans. Emmerson Mnangagwa, on assumption of power, he showed that he was a man who had learned nothing and forgotten nothing. He forgot the roots of his power on day one, and instead of correcting the mistakes of former President Robert Mugabe, he instead went about to prove to all of us that Mugabe was actually a saint.
I think we can stop it right there. The story is the same. The question that has to be asked here is, why did the 2017 military coup fail to deliver the good governance? If one was to listen to this gentleman, what they're saying is exactly what was said by people like Matemadanda about Robert Mugabe and those who were behind the military coup of 2017. And yet, the nation is back to where we were, fighting to end Mnangagwa's rule. The truth is, the military coup of 2017 failed to identify those who were behind the military coup, failed to identify the real root cause of why Zimbabwe was a failed state. All they sought was power for themselves. They believed it was their turn now to be in power. And like all autocrats, they believed that they would not do anything wrong. Indeed, when Mnangagwa got into power, he was so confident. He even proclaimed that Zimbabwe was open for business, confident that the country was going to be launched into an economics prosperity unseen ever since the country's independence. It didn't happen, of course. All he managed to do was try to reward those around him with the spoils of power. Political patronage, which had destroyed Mugabe's rule, he carried on. And the gentlemen who are speaking here now, they also know that what they are talking about here is that it is their turn to rule. But of course, they would want us to believe that they are not corrupt, that they will run the country in the interests of all. Comrade Blessed Kesa is on record. You, in this video, went on to talk about how the country must respect the Constitution. Well, we all remember VP Chiwenga before the coup, holding the Constitution and arguing that he was fighting to uphold the Constitution. When he staged the coup, some people believed that the country was going to change. Mnangagwa himself was on record promising to hold free, fair, and credible elections, a promise that he promptly forgot. VP Chiwenga has been vice president ever since the 2017 military coup. Surely, he must know that the Constitution of Zimbabwe calls for free, fair, and credible elections. And yet, when he was campaigning for office, he is on record saying that he will crush the opposition like lice. Is that the language of a Democrat? Of course not. The truth of the matter is, as much as our friends would they believe that it is their turn to enjoy absolute power. This is why the 2017 military coup failed. Here is a short video clip of an army general speaking, reiterating the issue of how Zanu PF military, and in this case here, we know that the military, the police, the CIO, the prison service, and the war veterans have worked together to maintain the Zanu PF one-party dictatorship.
Zanu PF itatonga kusika matonge ameranya. Muchida musingadi. Ameni. Apa ndakutaura sakomanda ami. Shashandisa inonzi command 40. Yes. Yaya masapuku wariti wemusanga chazvigadzira. Amen. Zanu PF. Amberina igi Mnangagwa. Pasi nemandu. Security forces saka PC mkuru wemaudondini.
What we are seeing here is the political reality in Zimbabwe. As much as Comrade Blessing Keza and these comrades would want us to believe that they are going to uphold the law, all they are trying to do here is uphold one section of the law. The most important section here they're fighting for is that Mnangagwa should not be allowed to stay in power beyond the stipulated 2-term limits, because they are garnering for their own candidate, VP Chiwenga. And if VP Chiwenga was to be confirmed today as a candidate of Zanu PF, our friends in the war veterans, the army, the police, the CIO, the prison services, and Zanu PF youths will play their usual part and rig the elections. They want to uphold one section of the Constitution, the term limits in one hand, and yet disregard an equally important section of the Constitution that says the people of Zimbabwe, everyone must have a meaningful say in the governance of the country in the form of free, fair, and credible elections. That is the problem. I don't think our friends have learned anything. As much as they accuse Mnangagwa of failing to learn anything from history, they too have learned nothing from history. After 45 years of rigged elections, Zimbabwe's number one problem is the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Let's address that problem. And pretending somehow that we can get away with a musical chair system of every few years replacing the dictator and a few of those around him with another dictator is solving the problem is naive, to say the least. I would like to remind the people of Zimbabwe that what we are talking about here is not so much changing the dictator and a few around him, is to change the system, the dictatorship itself. You get rid of the dictatorship itself, and you'll get rid of dictators. And you will have for yourself good governance. As much as I sympathize with the war veterans, yes, many of them, I know them personally, and they have lived in abject poverty. And many of them have died in abject poverty. But so have millions of other fellow Zimbabweans. Zimbabwe is a failed state because we have got a failed political system. It is a system that we must change. The war of liberation was to deliver freedom and liberty to all. That is what we must embrace. I join the war veterans in calling for Zanu PF to stop amending the Constitution. I think the amendment of the Constitution to allow Mnangagwa to stay in office beyond 2028 is one of the most serious challenge to Zimbabwe's political stability. Rigging elections have been bad enough, but at least you rig the elections and get a 5-year term. So at the end of it, there's a chance of forcing free, fair, and credible elections and restoring good governance. If Mnangagwa and company are allowed to change the constitution, what they will effectively do is, yes, provisionally, they're talking of postponing elections by 2 years, from 2028 to 2030. The problem is once you've let the genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back. Once you've given Parliament the power to postpone elections, they will do so again and again and again. This is a problem that we will have left not only for ourselves in 2028, but we will have imposed on future generations. This is a problem that the nation will have to deal with. How to wrestle power back to the people. The right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country is a fundamental right. And it is absolutely essential for good governance. It is bad enough that for 45 years we've had rigged elections. But if we're going to have the next 5 years, 45 years, where people's right to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country has all but been taken away from them, that is an even more serious situation. We have got a tough problem before us. This Mnangagwa government is determined to amend the constitution. Mnangagwa is desperate to hang on to power, just as Mugabe was desperate to hang on to power. Mugabe had to be removed from office through a military coup. It is a tragedy that it had to come to that. And it is equally tragic that it may have to come to that too, to remove Mnangagwa. We have got to sort out the problem of our politics. We need a stable political system. We need to implement the democratic reforms that will guarantee the right of every Zimbabwean to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That, I believe, is what Comrade Blessed Geza and his friends should be talking about. And if they talked about that, I will join them in that. But as long as they're talking about this musical chair of replacing one dictator with another, I cannot join them in that. We need to change the system and not just a few individuals in the system. Thank you very much. Have a good night.